So this week I decided to use a super glue that was way more runny than I first thought. The post glue up residue was really bad. I struggled intently to put a grip on again, but it seems to end okay. To start off, we come in and remove the scuff sheet. It's super important to use some heat when you're removing a scuff sheet, otherwise you start to drag some of the fibres from underneath. Be careful not to use too much heat though, as using too much heat will cause the scuff sheet and stickers to melt, and this will cause more issues to the willow and the bat underneath. The hairdryers are really useful if you're at home. You can see here that I'm actually using a hairdryer. We have now upgraded to a heat gun, which is a little bit more professional, but hairdryers do the job well enough if you're just trying to do this at home. However, you will see in sort of upcoming videos that heat gun is much better at doing this. As you can see here as well, the willow starts to tear with the scuff sheet. It's really important that when you're taking scuff sheets off, if you are going to do this at home, that you take those little bits of willow off and don't allow the scuff sheet to take those bits of willow that flick up with it. Try and peel what you can off the scuff sheet before you fully remove the scuff sheet. Again, removing a scuff sheet seems like a good thing to do when you're at home and putting a new one on yourself, but it can cause a lot of problems, especially as there's a lot of unknowns underneath it. For example, that little tear that's come up there. Another important thing to remember with scuff sheet is to make sure you always go across the grains. So just removing the rest of the stickers, some tape off the back of the bat as well. I assume this tape was in place to hold together that big crack that you can see there. Once you've taken off a scuff sheet, come in and glue up the cracks. It's important to glue these cracks before and onto sort of any sanding or anything. As you can see, getting in with the scraper and really getting into those cracks is important to get as much glue as possible in those cracks. The glue that's used is just a basic PVA glue. And then we pop a little bit of paste in there as well. Paste is important, especially in this scenario, because it just adds a little bit more substance to that repair. There were some rather large cracks on there, and as you'll see at the end, it does help when it comes to holding that bit of willow together on the edge there. It just helps fill in some of the gaps. Then we flip it over and apply some glue to the other edge. Both edges were pretty similar in terms of the cracks that they had, but the one on the left hand side that you can see there had much worse cracking, so we needed to fill that with some paste. However, the one on the right hand side wasn't so bad. Then we come in and tape up. Again, the tape just allows for that stronger binding, that stronger hold overnight. Come in and clamp up. As you can see here, using some old handles for the bottom clamp. This just allows you to go a little bit more with the concave of the bat. Don't ever put clamps directly onto the willow, as this will cause huge indentations to the willow overnight, especially, as you normally leave them to be clamped up overnight. Don't go crazy with the pressure with the clamps, but just enough pressure just so you start to feel a little bit of resistance. Often as well you can see where the glue's coming out, so just enough for the glue to start popping out, but don't go crazy. You don't need to really tighten them on, just tight enough. So then you come back the next day after the glue's dried overnight and remove all the clamps. Normally I put them back where they belong, but obviously couldn't be bothered at this point. Come in and cut that tape off. Again, be careful when peeling the tape off, similar to the scuff sheet, that you're not taking any of that willow with you. There's a lot of tape on this one, I think mainly because of how badly the edge cracks were. And again, be careful when you're cutting with the knife and not to damage the willow underneath. So when you flip it over, be careful again not to damage too much of that willow underneath when you're taking it off. And sometimes it's useful to use heat again here, but be careful with the heat after you've glued up, because after a glue up it can disturb some of that glue that you've put in to form those bonds in the cracks. So if you start heating that up, it can actually have an adverse effect and start those cracks. Those cracks can start to open up again. So just be careful if you are going to use heat when you're taking off that tape for the second time. So to prepare for sanding, we come in and take these stickers off, again using the hairdryer to just to make your life a little bit easier. If you are, for example, going to replace stickers at home, it is really important to use some heat on those. And they do often leave a bit of a sticky residue underneath, which means other stickers won't stick as well on top. So make sure if you are going to do this that you get rid of that sticky residue as well, either through sanding or through scraping it off with a hairdryer. So I decided to remove the grip at this point, not really sure why. Probably made sense at the time, but it's a while ago since I filmed this one. But then we come in, start sanding the face off with a really coarse sandpaper. We normally start with about an 80 grit, but as you see here, once you have sanded it down, first of all, a lot of that sticky residue from the scuff sheet, it's sort of a combination of the scuff sheet, the tape that you put on over the top, from the stickers, it can all have a bit of an impact. So if you come in and just scrape that off, using a draw knife here, an old blunt draw knife, but you can use a scraper and a hairdryer as we're doing on the stickers at the top there. Again, the reason for the draw knife on the lower part of the blade was mainly due to the fact that I didn't want to disturb that glue that had already been put down. Then you come in with the same grit sandpaper and start sanding again. And as you can see, the remnants of those stickers starts to disappear. So on that really badly affected side where we're putting a lot of the paste, we had to chuck in the draw knife on there as well, just to get rid of that excess glue on top. And because of the paste, it is a lot thicker on there. I tried getting at a bit of a different angle of the sanding, but propped it on the bench and didn't realise that the impact that the sander would have. So that didn't end very well. As you can see, the other side glue up wasn't so bad. And then come in and sand the back of the bat. Again with that coarse sandpaper, starting about an 80 grit. Probably wouldn't go much lower than 80 grit. You could again probably start at 120, but 80 seems to get all that residue off. And with the sticky residue of the glue and stuff, it does take a little bit more time to get that off there. Try to avoid using anything that's wet as well. I wouldn't advise that. So as you can see, once the sticky residue has been removed, it becomes a lot easier to take the willow back down to its original fresh wood. So come in and sand the toe. This takes a lot longer than it's shown on here, but with the powers of editing and stuff, we can make it look a lot quicker. Again, keep that with that 80 grit sandpaper. So once we've sanded all that off, we come in with then a 120 grit sandpaper and just moving up through the grits, getting slightly less coarse as we go on. Normally I tend to do this super glue with an 80 grit sandpaper, and as you can see it's starting to run everywhere because it's a little bit more runny than I first expected and compared to the other super glues that I use. But as you can see, the super glues kind of run over the edges of the bat as well, onto the edges. Normally it doesn't go over the sides like that, but that's just because of this one's a little bit more viscous. So obviously then you want to go and sand those edges down again, and a 120 grit sandpaper will probably be enough to get rid of that residue from that super glue. But if you are going to do this at home, this is useful to fill those small face cracks. If you are going to do this as well, make sure you hand sand it first and stand well away. The fumes and the smells and not really sure what it is, but it's not nice if you come in with the machine sander again straight away. But once you have hand sanded it down, make sure to come back in with the machine sander and just get the rest of the residue off from that super glue that you've just popped on there. You don't always have to do this, but it is useful if you can see some face cracks on there, which you can't really see on the video, but there were a few tiny little face cracks on there that needed seeing to with the super glue, and that aren't quite applicable for your PVA glue. It's just a little bit too small, but do need seeing to. So again, with that 120 grit sandpaper, just come in, clean up the face a little bit more. It's tricky to know when you're done, but I tend to know when I'm done by the feel of the face of the bat and how smooth it is, but also whether we're back down to fresh willow. Back down to fresh willow just means that, for me anyway, that the stickers and where the stickers have been, you can't tell anymore. So you wouldn't really be able to tell the brand of the bat from once you've done this sanding process. And as you can see there, the edge has come up a lot nicer. Still not in the best condition with that paste that's filled it, but it's looking a lot better than it did when it came in. So just finishing off with that 120 grit sandpaper, and then pop it onto a 240 grit sandpaper and do the face, the edges and the back of the blade again, and then you come in with a hand sand, and this is just to get rid of those swirls from the sander. And this is probably more relevant if it's an orbital sander, but this is useful to do with all bats, just to get that nicer finish. And then come over to the polish wheel and polish the blade. So to finish it off, we put some Charlie French stickers on there, some broadside stickers, quite similar to the GM ones actually that were on there initially, very similar to what the bat looked like before it came in. If you're putting new stickers on at home, it's important that you make the area where you're popping the stickers on as clean as possible and down to that fresh wood. Then we come in and put some edge tape on. Now, it's a little bit controversial, I suppose, popping the edge tape underneath the scuff sheet, like we're going to do here, but that was the way that Uncle Charlie always did it. So, given that it's Charlie stickers, given that he was in the business for 30 years, well, he must have done something right. So, for Charlie, we'll carry on that tradition of popping the edge tape underneath the scuff sheet. Obviously, I always had my bats that way. That was how they came from Charlie, with the edge tape underneath. And the ones that I've repaired that have been like that have been much easier to repair, and much less hassle getting that scuff sheet off. Plus, it looks a lot tidier once you've come in and put that edge tape underneath the scuff sheet instead of on top of the scuff sheet. And that edge tape will hopefully help prevent having major cracks like that you can see that were sort of on the bat in the first instance. So I ended up making this scuff sheet way too long, so I had to come in and cut it. But normally I try to leave a little bit of room at the bottom of the scuff sheet, just so it doesn't mess up. Obviously, with tapping your bat on the ground, the scuff sheet becomes a little bit messy near the bottom, but I've got my measurements wrong on this one, so it's a little bit too long, and so I had to come in and cut it. Then I start popping the grip on again. As you can see from the finished product, the grip does actually end up at the bottom, but for some reason I decided to keep strolling out of shot, so this is the only clip that was worthwhile from me putting the grip on. But in the end, it came out really nicely. As you can see, the polish gives it that nice shine. So there it is, it ends up coming out really nicely. I actually know the customer, and this guy reckons he's going to be buying up 5 or 6 this year. Now, not so sure about that from what I saw of him at university, but it came out really nicely in the end. And hopefully this bat will last a good while, especially if the player's only using it as a net bat.